right. The NFL Combine for mine, maybe yours, hopefully Chris Greer's beloved offensive line is now finito. We got to understand the Combine is a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's some value to it, but it really comes down to the tape, the needs of the team. But there was some interesting stuff today. So I'm going to get into the top performers that were kind of in the Dolphins' radar and then go over things I've been hearing in my own estimations. So that's going to be the deal. Will Campbell was getting a lot of stuff, kind of pushing down his value. That happens a ton. This happens during the Combine. It's used to enhance or put down players. He performed pretty darn well. 4.98. People were a little eye-popping for his 40. His split time was 1.76, which wasn't super duper, but it was pretty darn good for a big guy. He had a 32 vertical, 9.5 broad jump. The guy can move. He's not super elite. His arm length was 32.58. Some people will knock that, and there is a sort of a reason for that. If you don't have as longer arms, it demands a little bit more technique. His hand size, a little bit small, 9.5. I think his hands are bigger than mine, so I'm not complaining too much. Those have value, but this guy faced a ton of competition that's going to the NFL. He's got a pedigree. I think he's definitely going top 10. But I thought he would go to the Patriots, but I'm wondering from what I'm seeing here, he might fall a little past that. And there's an opportunity there, at least, to push guys back to us. And there's one guy I'll get into in a second that should be pushed back. Now, out from 3 yards per carry, I respect him a ton. All the guys over there, they know what they're talking about. And he was hot on Kelvin Banks Jr. Banks Jr. has an arm length of 33, which is good, not super great, but good. His hand size was gigantic, 10.5, and that helps you just the space to impact and to grab. There's power in the size of your hands. And so he had some pretty good numbers there. 5.16 on his 40, 1.79 on his split, 32 vertical, and a little short 8.8 on his broad jump. But when you watch the film, this guy is a mover. Now, for the Dolphins, they interviewed him. They interviewed a few of these guys I'm going to talk about. I'm not super hot. Not saying he's not good, but he's a little bit of a tweener. I'm concerned with that in the sense that if you move him inside to guard, is he going to have the drive power? Now, I love what he can do on the move. You go watch the film, and this guy moves extraordinarily well. And he would work well for what we're doing, the outside zone, the screens, getting to the second level. So I definitely think he's on the radar. Although there's another guy you probably know I think should definitely be on the radar. I think another guy, I'll get into Membo, earned himself a real legitimate shot at our 13. I think Membo is a little higher on than Banks. Banks, I think, could be, but he's a little bit of concern for what he'll do with us. Because when you pair him next to, say, a Brewer with maybe Jackson in between or on the other side, I'm just a little concerned about his drive power. I think this guy can play. I think when you look at the unit that's around him, it kind of changes his draft status. But he's definitely a guy I think we're going to look at, but I think he's B more than A, or should be. Now, I heard a lot about Tyler Booker, guard, being at us at 13. There's no way we're taking him at 13. Greer's history says no. He has great arm length at 34, huge hands at 11. But the 5.38 40, the 1.96 split, the 2.77 vertical, and then the 10 broad jump, he's just not going to fit what we want to do. We're not moving our scheme. Our scheme is our scheme. It's going to be heavy outside zone, lots of movement, screens, all that other stuff. We're going to tweak a little bit to get some inside zone, but I don't see him in any way, shape, or form being our 13th pick. Now, Zabel, a lot of people like him. I think he's more of a center than a guard. We met with him. He's got a great IQ, smallish hands, 32. Arm length 32, smallish hands at 9.5. I'm not really too, but his vertical was 36.5 and his broad jump was 9.3. I think this guy is a player. I think his IQ, his ferocity, and you see that there's explosion on. That explosion kind of helps in the drive, to pop out, to move guys. I just don't think that, I know he's not our 13th. I think maybe they're saying, you know what, if he drops to our second, he could be available. He could be a guy that we want, but I think he's much better at center. I think he would fit us at guard, and we might bring him in there for the multiplicity of playing center and guard. But I don't see him being a guy, obviously, at 13. I think he's more second, but I don't know if he's going to make it there. Now, Membo, this guy, I think it was Abel, and who's on with me the live on Mondays, 8:30, if you don't know, really shocked. This guy is a guy I think that Grier might be inclined to take at 13. From everything I'm hearing, from everything I know about Grier, from what I'm seeing is he's going to use this free agency to get steady guys, maybe a little above average at one and a steadier guy there in free agency, 2 guys, and then draft somebody a little bit later in the 3rd or 4th round and another guy back end and then look back in the 2nd round of free agency. I don't think Zabel is on our list, except maybe in the 2nd round. I'm just not sure. I think there's teams out there that are going to want him at center. But Membo, 33.5 arm length, 9 1/3 hand, not so big, but pretty nice arm length. But 4.91 on the 40, 1.74 split, which is the best of everybody here. 34 broad, 9.7, 34 vertical, 9.7 broad. Membo is big at 323. He can move. He can maybe pinch you out at the tackle spot in a break in case of emergency. But this guy would fit us phenomenally at the guard position, whether we wanted to play inside zone or outside zone. I think he could do a very good, even better mimicking of Hunt. I certainly think Membo's on our radar. I just am not certain. I did my podcast yesterday about the defense, whether he outvalues as Grier evaluates value and McDaniel evaluates value to ride higher than some other guys that might fall. Certainly a cornerback, certainly maybe a DN. But I do think he is legitimately, after what he did with his tape, with his size, what he can do playing both positions, to be a guy on the radar. But if we don't grab Membo at 13 with what you see here, if we pass on him for a defensive spot, I don't think you're going to see an offensive line pick by us until the 3rd or maybe 4th round. We got to see what happens in free agency. But this guy, if this guy is not picked at 13, then you know the value charting of Grier. I'm hoping he is. I know we need defense. But man, this guy could really help us. And I think even more so than Kelvin Banks, who I love a ton on the move. On the move. But remember, I've talked about this. Some people said it wasn't true. But I think maybe if you watch the film from last year, we've got to move guys in the A and B gap, especially in the red zone. Membo is a big guy who I think is not the kind of guy like Banks to get on the move, but can drive guys out, dig guys out, and he can offset Brewer's weaknesses. Or if he's paired between Brewer and Jackson, both their weaknesses. I love Membo. I hope we draft him. I think there might be a better option, good, better, or best, but boy, we need help on this offensive line, and he is the best. Now, last of the bunch, Jalen Rivers is a guy we interviewed. It's more of the guy I think we're going to get to shoot for in the 3rd or 4th round. 34 and 7/8 inch arm length. Unbelievable. It really helps you to manage guys when you can keep them out of getting inside. And he's got 10-inch arms, which is a solid size. He wasn't much a mover at the 5'3", 8. He had 185 on the split, but when you compare that to, say, 176 of Campbell and the 179 of Banks, it's really not that much. I didn't see him do the vertical. He had a 9 broad, but this guy's a big guy, 6'6", a guy that you can develop maybe to move off Jackson. Rivers is a guy who I think we legitimately should have a hope for to target. A guy like that in the mid rounds. I think we should be very high on Membo. I want him way more than Banks. But I just don't see it. When you go over our defense, like I did yesterday, defense is a huge, huge need. If we can't stop teams on defense, it's going to force us to score more. Guys that are even rookies, they're going to take time to develop, and I don't think we have that. This is why I think Grier is going free agency to get 2 solid guys in there to bolster Paul, to bolster Jackson, and to bolster Brew, and to get out of the gate running with a guy in the background, kind of like Hunt, who might develop and come in later in the season. Now, Alaric with the Rams was signed. Smith was re-signed with KC. Guys are coming off this free agency list. Daniels, Banks. I think those are kind of the guys we're going to look for, especially a guy like Daniels who's got the ACL, to get a little cheap. We don't have a ton of money. I think that's where Grier is going to be looking. One of those 2 guys. Now, a very interesting thing on the last to close it out. Bears and Jenkins. He's a free agent. They're going to, I think, want to help out a young quarterback, and I think they're going to re-sign Jenkins. He's too good to let walk. They need all the help. You can get a guy in here who's been valuable for you, knows the system, you know what he's about, and you don't have to spend a draft pick. So what Bears do with Jenkins is going to kind of set, because remember, a lot of teams want these free agent offensive linemen. A lot of these teams have more money than us. And so the more guys that are out there, the more chance we can get these free agents. Again, we'll be interested to see if we can't pick up any top free agents, maybe Grier is forced to go for Membo. I would like to see us, we can't fill all the needs, but I would like to see us solidify one side of the ball. I think Grier needs to win. He's going to try to fill out both sides. But we need to run this football, especially inside, especially in the red zone. We need to give Tua a good pocket, a good offensive line production to evaluate him. So that's what I'm seeing. I think you should be excited. There's a lot of guys. There's other guys out there that I know we're going to be targeting, but these were the prime ones. Membo at 13, if he's there, could be the guy for us, and a guy I think we should feel safe about. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the Combine. It's a hop, skip, and a jump from free agency, and that's going to tell a lot of the tale. But from what I've been hearing with guys who have a little bit of knowledge behind the scenes, that the Dolphins they want offensive linemen, but free agency and mid-rounds is more where they're targeting. So, Kurt is saying, be well, go Fins. Let's get this offensive line fixed. Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with AceBread.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.